Hello, my name is Serge Guislain, and I'm glad to introduce you to our Belgian railroad layout. This is my wife, Jessamine, and we built this together.
We did it for ourselves as a hobby together, and also to have our memories on here. But we also did it for our children and our grandchildren. We've been married 61 years. We have 4 daughters, Claire, Anne, Yvette, and Monique. And from those daughters, we have 8 grandchildren: Ben, Rebecca, Madeline, Drew, Emily, Maddie, Gracie, and Lauren. So glad you came with us on this journey. We hope you enjoy the ride. So, where did this idea come from? I, for one, have always loved trains. When I was a little girl, we would go once a year on the train to Chicago to visit my grandparents. We would take our box lunch with us that Mom had prepared, my sister and my brother, and we would go on the train with her to see her parents, and then we'd see the other grandparents as well. So I've always loved trains. There was a wonderful train store in Crown Center in Kansas City, Missouri, called Hall's Station. And we had seen that many times. And so as a surprise for Serge, it really was my idea. I didn't know if he'd like it or not. But when he retired, I thought he needed something to do as a hobby. And so I bought him a starter set made by the tremendous German company Marklin, who are known for their beautiful, beautiful locomotives and cars, very high quality. So that's what I bought him, was a starter set, which is a locomotive and a tender and I think maybe 2 cars. And so that's how it all started. I presented the idea to him, and I wondered if he would want to do it, and I found out, yes, he would. He did want to do it. So it began from there.
When I first got the present, I was kind of very surprised because I hadn't played with a train and I was not that interested. But because I'd received it as a gift, I mean, I had to really accept it. Yeah, it did remind me of my HO layout that they had when I was growing up.
So this is the story of our model railroad layout that we both worked on and completed. We started in 1999. We just completed it about a year ago in 2021, just by adding more details.
I had read in magazines that, there was a limitation. If you have just a rectangular display, you see the whole thing at one time. I didn't want that. I want something more like you go to the theater, when you look at the actors, they don't all come up on the scene. They only come when they're called for. And so I wanted to make it more real so you don't see the whole loop and all the rails, but you see only, like in real life, a section of the train passing by. The biggest problem was the curves. You go on the curve and on the spiral going up, it's very difficult to calculate the radius and all that. So pretty soon we added to the original set, we added the flexible rails, which allowed us to do exactly what I wanted to do.
The time frame of our layout ended in 1964 because we left Europe. So the era of this layout is between 1945, just after World War II ended, and 1964 when we decided to move to the United States.
Well, the towers you see in the background were inspired by the city of Ghent, and I had to ask my godchild, Sarah Rooney, to paint them on this background. It was pretty difficult because she had all the construction already in front of her, so she had a very difficult position to those vertical lines. But the result is pretty nice.
So Serge was the designer, the electrician, the architect, the engineer of the whole thing. And my part in it was doing the scenery and the structures and all the details. He did help me construct at least two of the big buildings that were very complicated, the church and the city hall, but the rest I did. So I did the scenery. Serge did all the rocks that are around, made out of acoustical ceiling tile, glued together on top of each other, and then carved out as rocks, and then I painted them. They look just like limestone. This is the second scene that I did. I did these two corners. I was kind of scared because I had never done anything like this in my life, so I did these two things. After Serge did the rocks underneath, all of this limestone, and then I painted them.
I was very surprised to see how much talent as a painter and decorator Jess had. And, it was so much fun to work together. And I had not anticipated that. I thought I would have all the work to do myself. To my surprise, she got really, really involved in all the doing. That was so. It's such a nice way to spend time together. For the original circuit, I modified the design that I found in a magazine. It showed what you should have, at least for a much bigger layout, the central part, where you decide where the trains are going to go and all that. So I took that nucleus of that design and modified it to fit. Also, originally there was a pool table. I want to go around this whole basement with my railroad, but now the pool table here, I calculated the space and there was no space left for a railroad, so I was forced to go around in the back, close to where the furnace is, and then even a part under the staircase to do exactly what I want to do. It created quite a bit of space where you can walk around, and it looks a lot bigger than it really is. It's very compact. But when we showed the display to the kids, they want to see the train all the time. They were not interested in my adult view of this landscape. And so we were forced to open the downside. I made windows on the bottom where you can see the train, where the train runs on the ground, And
you put lights under there, too.
We had to put we put Christmas lights, actually, to illuminate the
Christmas lights.
All the space under there. And it turns out to be very nice.
There was a decade when Serge and I did a lot of traveling to Europe, and every time we went to Belgium, we would go to the Markland store in Brussels and buy a locomotive. So all the equipment to make the grass and the cobblestones that he carved and the trees and all of that scenery stuff you could easily find in Kansas City in train stores. But in the United States, there were at that time a couple of train stores, 2 or 3 train stores, where we could buy kits to do the houses. There was also a train store that was going out of business, and I bought a lot of their houses that are on the layout in the city, some of the buildings of the city. And so I got them at a very good price.
The controls now, that's another thing. Originally, the trains layout had sections where the trains were supposed to use the same rail to go either way, up or down. To do this, you had to force some trains that were going in the wrong direction at one time to let the other train pass by. Well, very nice in theory. It's all easy to do in theory, but in practice, the programs that I bought were promised to do the thing, but we found out they're not, and so we were very disappointed. That forced me to modify the railroad and add a second rail at those sections, and most of the section it was possible. This was the time when the LEDs became first known here, and but there was not much information about the voltage and all the technicalities of how to install them. You could buy it locally, so I had to buy from a German store, internet, and I bought a set of LEDs, and I had to really adapt them because they were made to use on a ship, in real life for rooms, and I want to use it for miniature rooms, and so I had to do a lot of adaptation. Yeah, the bridge is, pretty long, and it came in a set that was much shorter, and so I had the idea to cut it in 2, so I made it like 3 different arches. I think I'm happy with the result because it's very realistic. Well, as I said,
I want to tell the story.
Yes, on the post you see there on the end of the corner building, you see a big poster, and that's actually a reproduction of a picture that my brother Thierry found in a magazine. And so to our surprise, the exact place where I was born is shown in that picture. And all the Guislain, all my brothers and sisters, were born in that room behind that statue. This is the schoolhouse that reminds me of Notre Dame de Sion, the place where I had my first primary class. Of course, the nuns were doing all the teaching and the disciplining. Behind there was a play area, and we had quite a bit of fun there. At the end of our street, there was a Napoleonic type of fortress that had been erected as part of the fortification around Antwerp. In the winter, we had a chance to go over there and play in the areas around the fortress. You see on the river there's a little boat, and that's it's named the Bonhomme, and that shows one of the towboats that my father had in his fleet, because he was a public contractor. He was dredging sand and gravel from the river, and so he had a little fleet of ships that could bring the sand to the quay, and so you need a tugboat, and Bonhomme means good little man. The brasserie was actually like brewery. It's a French word for brewery. Was owned by my maternal grandfather. The beer that was made there was very famous, and it was a pale ale that was very much appreciated. I like to remember it, especially because it had a adjoining huge space, multiple rooms, multiple floors, where the big kegs were full of beer were stockpiled, and Wonderland to play as a little boy. So that brings back memories of my childhood. I thought I had forgotten, but seeing the building really brought it back to memory. How much fun I had playing there. On the other side of the layout, you will see there's also a farm, you know, with cows and other animals, and that reminds me of during the war, you know, the Germans didn't allow you to take big trips for vacation, but as vacation we went to the country, and I learned how to milk cows and all that, and so we put the sounds of the animals there, and it brings back also happy memories of my childhood. Actually, the first girl I ever kissed was one of the farm girls. There's a lake view, and that happens to be almost exactly what I saw, the view I saw when I was in Africa. Lake Kivu, beautiful lake, and that's the view I had. I had been working in Africa. That was my first job, actually. I had 3.5 years in Africa as a researcher on climate. I was very much alone because everybody around us was married. The loneliness became very heavy on me. And when I returned to Europe, I said, I'm going to try to find a wife because that loneliness, I cannot stand it. But that gave me a thirst to have a family. It was not just to have a wife, it's also to be a father. I wanted to be a father.
So can I continue the story?
Yeah, continue.
I'll continue the story. So in the meantime, this is 1959, I graduated from college with a degree in organ performance and church music. And my organ teacher, the year before, when I was a junior, had me apply for a Fulbright scholarship. I thought he was crazy because they're very hard to get, and I didn't think I could ever get one. Anyway, sure enough, that summer after I graduated, I got a letter from the State Department. You received a Fulbright scholarship, and you're leaving on September 22nd on the ship. So I arrive in Belgium with the other 11 Fulbrighters who were going to be in the country of Belgium. We have a week of orientation, and then we have to find a place to live in the various cities where we were going to be living. And I was going to be in Antwerp at the Royal Flemish Conservatory, studying under a world-renowned teacher, composer, and performer by the name of Floor Peters. So his wife, Mr. Peters' wife, knew that he had had a student over the summer who had stayed at a family home, and he wondered if they would be willing to have another student because she had gone home. When I first came into the house, their son was there. And he was ready to go back to the Belgian Congo. Well, of course, you know that was Serge. We started playing violin and piano together. He played violin. Of course, I played piano as well. And we started making music together every single night. And he also, by day, was my tour guide for Antwerp. So we went everywhere in Antwerp. After 1 week of playing music together, during one of those sessions, he asked me to marry him. Imagine that. 1 week. I said, no, I am already engaged to be married to someone else, which of course was true.
I didn't know.
No, he didn't know it. So he still acted as my tour guide, and we still played music every single night together. So at about 6 weeks later, I told him I'd marry him. So it didn't take long. Then, of course, I had to write Dear John letters to my first fiancé. He didn't put up much of a fight, so that was funny. He said, well, if that's what you've decided, there's not much I can do about it.
I wanted her parents to be really, see that she was freely wanted to be married and was not under undue pressure. So that's why I asked her to please go back home and get a blessing of her parents.
The Fulbright Association paid for my travel back home, which was a big thing because that was very expensive. They put me on the fastest ocean liner. It still holds the championship speed for crossing the Atlantic, and it was the SS United States. Came to New York and then flew home. We had a dressmaker that made clothes for us, for my sister and I and my mom, but mostly my sister and I. She made my wedding dress while I was there. I, went around and saw friends and all of that. I was home a month. I couldn't fly into Brussels because at that very moment was when the Belgian Congo got independence. And there were many Belgians who were fleeing the Congo because there were tribal wars that started. It was not a pretty scene. And so all the airplanes were going to Africa to bring back these people. So there weren't any airplanes. So that's where I went to Rotterdam, flew to Rotterdam instead, took the train to Antwerp. And that's where we had our reunion was in Antwerp when I got off that train. And that was sometime in early July. I still had fear about what the future would bring because, a new country, leaving my whole family, all my friends. It was a big thing. But we weathered the storm, didn't we? And
we did.
Yeah.
In order to get married in Belgium, you need to have official papers before you go before a priest or whatever. And so we went to the consulate to have the American paperwork that was needed.
Yes, because I was not a citizen. I became a citizen when I married him. The scene that I loved the most in the layout, that was the high point, is of course our wedding scene. That's got to be the best because it was such an incredible day, and even though it was a very small wedding, it was in a huge church and with the most wonderful music you could have had, played by my teacher. We've had this friend who did custom sound chips, and he put Flora Pater's music played by Flora Pater's on a sound chip, and I found out we could put that on the layout in our wedding scene. That was just so exciting. That was so exciting because it was a very important part of my life. I mean, I wouldn't have, if I hadn't gone there to study organ, I would never have met Serge. It's one of those God moments, so that was really the high point, was doing that scene, that vignette about our wedding. So here's our wedding scene with one of our bridesmaids, our little girl, our nieces, and Serge's parents, and Serge's brother and sister-in-law, and the guys in my organ class, and of course here's the parish priest, and the guy taking a picture of that. So, and this is a car that we rented to take us from Serge's parents' house to the civil ceremony, to the religious ceremony, and back again to the house.
Now the church itself reminds me of our parish. It's the same style construction with two spires. So I was pretty pleased to find this model. We
were married in Antwerp at St. James Church, and then we had a lovely lunch at the family home afterwards for the family, and a dear priest friend who was in the organ class with me, and my instructor in the Catholic faith, because in the meantime I also decided I wanted to become a Catholic. So that instructor was there also at the luncheon. So it was a wonderful, wonderful day. And then we went on a very short little, we didn't have any money, so we had a very short little honeymoon, about a day and a half down in southern Belgium, in a real pretty little place by a river. I wanted to do a little scene of us with our 18-month-old baby girl, who was Claire, who was born in Brussels. And so I put a little scene of her in front, and Serge and I in front of our apartment in Brussels with the car that we owned, the same kind of car we had, which was a little Renault Dauphine. Whenever the sun came out, which was very rare in Belgium, I would rush outside with her in the pram and go to the park, which was a couple blocks away, so that I have her on the layout in her pram.
It's a wonderful way to pastime, to be working together and build up the love between man and wife. I mean, I find in my marriage, this has been a good way. Once, especially, you know, being retired, I spend a lot of time home, so we cannot talk all the time. But so having to do something together, you know, and cooperate and even consult each other was a wonderful experience, because he wouldn't even be on us, and we made friends. Like the background was built by my goddaughter, you know, Sarah Rooney. That was wonderful, because we had her for a week, several weeks. She painted here in the downstairs, and we never had that so long. and that kind of give pleasures, you know, and really unusual, because I'm used to read books and, you know, and be in my own room. But this is different. It's together. It was an activity together. It was very, very pleasant.
I would say the thing that this taught me was that if I would try, and even though something seemed very difficult to obtain, and that I had never done it before, that I could, if I really studied it and put my mind to it. Like, I mean, I never considered myself at all an artist. Yes, I'm a musician, but not the media of being an artist. But that brought that out in me, yes, you know, and I never knew I had that gift. I never knew it. And it was, you know, a lot of learning, and a lot of talking to people and asking their help. And I think that's the main thing that I learned, that, you know, if you just try it.
But the whole idea of making it also a historic remembrance of things that happened in our lives, that came out of the project itself. It was not originally not our idea.
No.
But it turns out that was what really brought us the most fun for us personally. And it's also, we found out it's so nice to communicate our experience to others.
That's the most fun.
Yeah, that's the most fun.
That's the most fun, is to have adults who are very interested in our stories, and then children who like to see the trains run and the monkeys in the tree and that kind of thing, you know. And then the ideas for the little vignettes that happen and all the little stories were my ideas. But then I kept seeing things at train stores that I absolutely had to have, little details that I absolutely love so much, and so I always found a spot for them. So it's full of details. The very first thing that I ever did as far as the scenery was this park. So I decided to put a joke in it. So you've got monkeys in the tree right here. You've got the policeman waking up the homeless guy on the bench. So this building, even though it's a kit from Germany, is very, very similar to the City Hall in the city of Brussels, Belgium. I put a little mime here. One of the first things that I did as far as seeing, of course, people watching the mime. We have a brass band playing Handel's water music, and we have sound for that. We have a recording that you will hear. In front of the bank, we actually have a little family right here that has lost their cat. And the cat is up here in the fort. One of my favorite things on this layout is this work in the street, the guy down in the manhole and with the flashing lights to warn people to stay away. I just love that little scene.
One of the scenes is when she came back from the United States, and I was so happy to see her because I was without $1 in my pocket and
no job.
And no job, and so I was wondering, will she come back or not? I couldn't believe how wonderful it was. When she saw me, she flew in my arms, and so I knew I was loved for, not for my money, but for myself.
Here we are at the railroad crossing. The arms come down when the train comes, and the lights flash, and the sound, and there are bells ringing, etc. And over here we have hobos with their fire, keeping warm, cooking their food underneath the bridge. Railroad workers right here. So in the village, we have several little scenes. We have a woman trying to get rid of a raccoon up here by the little shop. We have a priest in front of the church running away from some gossiping women. Guys playing cards and a young woman watching and blowing her bubble gum. We have also a village train station, and next to it, a village market where there are some American GIs, a girl, and then there's a truck which has music, which you will hear in the mood that's coming out of the truck. And over in the far corner, a shrine to the crucified Jesus with Franciscan monks and other people at the shrine. I noticed in some layouts that we had seen of friends of ours, that they had jokes on their layout. So I thought, well, why don't we put some jokes on ours too? So that's how it all began. And when I saw this group of monkeys that I could buy, I thought that was just perfect to start with. So I put those in the tree in the park. So that's how all the jokes. And then I kept finding stuff, and I kept looking for stuff in the scale, like the little glass cow I found at a little tiny store in Columbia, Missouri, that I put on the track, and the little tiny turkey. That was a funny little turkey. So it just kind of evolved from there. And then on the back, we have another joke called Bear Hunter, B-A-R-E. The guy is going on the pot there, and the bear is watching him. And that's why it's called Bear Hunter. One of our granddaughters' name is Maddie Crabtree. She's Yvette's oldest daughter. When she was a little girl, like 4 or so, she was obsessed by dinosaurs. I saw that they had little tiny HO-size dinosaurs with a little fence in front that they were breaking through, and then a guy running away. And I thought that it was perfect, so I put that on the layout for Maddie. Working on this project together, as Serge has said before, it was just so important. So important. It was something we had never done. We'd never done a project like this together. We had our own gifts, our own things that we loved to do. Mine was music, his was all kinds of other things. But we hadn't done anything together. So that brought us together, connected us really. But besides that, what I took such great pleasure in was inviting people over to our home to connect with other people. Sometimes people that I didn't even know, but they had heard about the train, and they said, well, can we come over and see it? We said, well, sure you can. We didn't even know them, but they knew someone that we knew and who told them about the train. So it was a gathering together of us with other people of all ages. And that's what's really fun.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to invite children and their parents. Mm-hmm. And so Yeah, we met people we would have never met otherwise.
Yeah.
Just because they heard that we had something in our basement that their kids would enjoy. And so, yes, it brought us really a lot of satisfaction. For me, the part of the scenery that Jess designed is the reunion at the station. And reflecting on it, yeah, it sounds silly, it's just a girl flying in the arms of a guy. But to me, the more I reflect on it, the more I see there was a time when God really spoke to me. He said, that's the one. And,
Now you really make me cry.
I've, reflected on this often in my life, how God had orchestrated this. Of course, all free will, it all depends on free will. I told her to go back home, so it would be clear that it was her choice, and that she was not forced into something, by the circumstances. But and I'm proud of this, because that's really what makes our actions so neat. It's because we have decided to go that way. But God had blessed us. The statistics, me meeting a girl from Kansas City and never having been in the United States. I mean, come on.
And your English was not too good.
Not knowing English, and then wanting to get married in a certain time period. And God made that possible. I thought I only had 3 months to find a wife. But God is good, and He's arranged for us to meet and to agree on this fantastic covenant of married people, when we promise to be with each other for life. And to me, that's the scene that creates the most emotion in my soul.